Claire Fitzgerald. I lead out on UK tax compliance services across the island of Ireland. I help businesses cross-border on the island and internationally cut through the complexities of the UK tax systems. My main focus is to help businesses with efficiency and get the right answers for their tax needs.
I'm Paul McSavage. I lead our transfer pricing practice here in Ireland, and I help multinational businesses deal with the complex issues in the world of transfer pricing and global tax in a commercially and pragmatic manner.
Sasha Cairns, I lead our international tax solution group across the island of Ireland. We deliver globally to multinationals, bringing together deep international tax expertise, providing consistent, scalable and commercial advice to clients supported by our global network.
I'm Emma Broderick. I lead our indirect tax solution here at Thornton, Ireland. And my team centrally delivers global indirect tax compliance and advisory solutions to clients across industries, across geographies, advising both from a tax technical perspective, but also how that translates into systems and processes to manage the complexity of indirect taxes.
Mark O'Sullivan, I lead our tax and grant incentives practice here on an all-island basis. My core focus is assisting clients globally with understanding the tax and grant incentives available to them and how they maximise those in an efficient and robust manner.
Claire, maybe just focusing from your perspective first, if we look at how it's evolving from the point of view of clients trying to simplify process, drive efficiency within their compliance function, but yet if we look at compliance globally, it's becoming much broader. The requirement about multi-jurisdictional reporting is ever increasing. How are you seeing that play out for UK corporate tax clients?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Sasha. To be honest, what clients used to do was do an annual tax return, a quarterly VAT return, and that was probably the maximum that they needed to do on a compliance cycle. What we're seeing is, I suppose, more businesses are entering new countries, new jurisdictions. That's adding a whole ream of complexity, not just in the corporate tax landscape, but across indirect tax, across employment tax, and that's just bringing so much more reporting. Their teams aren't getting any bigger, so what they're having is, I suppose, a squeeze on efficiency within their teams with a lot more real-time reporting to do. So I suppose what we're finding is not alone is it not just the annual tax return anymore, but it's a huge amount of more compliance. That's not considering Pillar 2. That's not considering transfer pricing. That's not considering business having to be ready for a revenue audit. There's lots more things on the international landscape that they need to consider now, and what they're seeing is they're needing more and more specialists from businesses like ourselves to help them with that. The problem being is data is in every jurisdiction. It's not held in one place. It's not easily accessible. So what they're seeing is they're having to look for data each time they need to report to a certain thing to a different country. It's increasingly complex, it's increasingly difficult, and there's just more time needing to be spent and no time to do it.
And how are we kind of helping them see that, improve efficiencies, work with them and their tax functions to really drive an element of synergy within the complex environment they're facing?
We take a slightly different approach here. So businesses are seeing all this complexity and all these different specialisms that they need. And what they find is they're having 6 different conversations. So they're having a conversation with an international tax expert, a transfer pricing tax expert, an indirect tax expert, an incentives expert, and they're having 6 different engagements with their advisors. So what we're doing differently at Grant Thornton is we're actually trying to get all those experts around the table to have one conversation so that the client is able to disseminate all the information to us at one time.
So Claire, from the point of view of any particular solution around the tax area, what are you seeing clients really focus on at the moment?
The number one thing, Sasha, that clients are talking to me about is transfer pricing. The multi-jurisdictional piece comes in there. They are wondering, are they doing the right thing? Do they have the right policies in place? What actually obligations do they have in country? So that's where Paul can have conversations with clients and really take that deep dive on that. Paul?
Yeah, well, that's not surprising to me. I think what's changed over recent years is that transfer pricing has become beyond a compliance aspect. It's now a strategic business issue. I mean, tax authorities have got more data, they've got better technology, and they've got more transparency. So unless your profits and your tax is aligned with substance and with the way in which you generate value, you are going to be found out. And I suppose the difference from maybe 5 or 10 years ago is the fact that transfer pricing is now going to be audited at some point in time rather than if.
And Paul, that's interesting. You talked about transparency, huge from the point of view of the volume of data that's being, reported to tax authorities. We've obviously seen CBCR, we've seen Pillar 2, we're now seeing public country by country reporting. And we're having a lot of conversations, aren't we, from the point of view of where that data is coming from, single source of data, and ultimately making sure that data stacks up in terms of the multiple filings and how that links in then with global transfer pricing and cross-jurisdictional audits?
Well, it goes back to my earlier point, is that transfer pricing is now beyond just a compliance exercise. This touches almost every single element of a business, certainly a multinational business. On the public country-by-country reporting, the actual reporting of the data is the simple bit. We're having conversations that go beyond tax, and it's not a tax decision to make whether or not you disclose certain information. This is now a regulatory or a public relations aspect that multinationals are considering, and those are the types of discussions that we're having. Tax is being moved further and further up the food chain. Mm-hmm. We're having, these are things that are being discussed at board level.
And then the other point, I think, just to maybe elaborate on that you identified, like transfer pricing is really dictating where profits are being taxed. And obviously we have various different models and we're seeing those evolve. Like, what's a core focus for you when you're advising clients in the space and where we can really deliver value?
Well, I find that when we provide advice, it's not in isolation, so that's number one. We have to think global because there's always more than one jurisdiction. And the other aspect here is that anything that we do from a transfer pricing point of view has an impact on corporate tax, all the other related taxes. One of the elements that we get involved with, and it's more and more so, is around VAT. Naturally, with services and with intercompany transactions, there is going to be some VAT aspect associated with those. So I'm working closer and closer with Emma and her team around all of those elements.
And just the interconnectivity, Emma, on that from your perspective?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because, from a transfer pricing perspective, you're looking at flows of goods and services cross-border and how that's priced, and that's really the essence of what VAT is. You're looking at the cross-border nature of those transactions. But picking up on what some of the guys have said, the key themes of what's coming out from a VAT perspective now is that clients aren't asking for a single country question in isolation anymore. Clients want to know the global answer. And it's more from an efficiency perspective, I think, for businesses. I advise a lot of clients who might act as head of tax sitting in Ireland but responsible for multiple jurisdictions. They don't want an answer just for Ireland in isolation. They don't want an answer just for France in isolation. They want to get that single answer. And if they're selling into 10, 20, 30 jurisdictions, they definitely don't want to be having that number of conversations. So it really works when we can sit down and look from a transfer pricing perspective as what has been mapped out, understand all the footprint of the business, and then take that back and get the single VAT answer that applies across all of those countries.
And how are we building global solutions from an indirect tax perspective to really help support clients in those asks?
That's exactly what we're doing, right? We want to be able to sit with the client and understand their business from a central perspective. So we want our clients to have a single point of contact that they can come to, that knows their business, but can then take that lens and apply it across to bring in local experts in the markets they're operating in. So we leverage our network certainly to bring in the local expertise that's needed to deal with local tax authority questions that might come up, but at the same time we do it in that centrally delivered fashion. So they're not repeating the question over and over, and they're not getting different versions of the same question answered in slightly different ways. So it gives a level of consistency to our clients. And then I think it's easier for our clients as well. They can have one simple conversation with us and they know that we know their business and we can elaborate on that and disseminate as needed as they look around different countries of the globe.
And then, leveraging technology and obviously AI in that delivery process to help drive some of the things we talked about with Claire around efficiency and process. Just your thoughts on what we're doing there?
Yeah, well, I think actually it's the technology that's driving it, because from a VAT perspective, the question isn't really about your local tax technical answer anymore. It's more about, well, if you want to be compliant, do you have, your VAT coding and tax determination logic built into your ERP? are you able to issue invoices that meet the VAT e-invoicing mandates in different countries? And that changes in every country. And then are you able to report all of that in real time to the tax authorities? So stepping back from that, our clients now aren't dealing with those small answers anymore. They're dealing with the global picture of how they've embedded VAT into their systems and processes. So again, for us to be able to deliver centrally to our clients and talk to them around the global picture is really critical. So certainly we are utilising technology to be able to deliver around things like compliance, but really what's key to it is understanding how the VAT needs to be embedded in our client's technology and being able to speak to that piece and translate those VAT technical requirements into what the client is actually doing day by day.
And I know we've stood up solutions to be able to deliver and understand client systems and be able to help them on that journey. And with things like e-invoicing and things coming down the track, it's even more important that they're ready for those.
Important. That's exactly right. Yeah, and we've a lot of solutions to look around. Well, how are you managing your VAT compliance and how are you addressing all of this constantly changing landscape from a VAT perspective? Because really everyone wants to get to a point where you can get a single answer globally that covers everything. And I don't think we're there yet, but certainly, I don't think anyone is there yet, but certainly that's the ambition, that we can deliver that cohesive answer across the globe.
And I know we work a lot together because we're seeing solutions from clients, not just necessarily a demand for global indirect, but we're seeing that sit with global direct. We're seeing that sit with global transfer pricing, and we're seeing that sit with Pillar 2. And similarly on the global direct side, from my perspective, having that ability to deliver not in silos anymore gives us the advantage that we can see the whole picture. It gives consistency of delivery, it gives streamlining, but it also gives us the ability to help clients drive insights off what we're seeing. I know you're seeing that on the VAT side, we're definitely seeing that on the direct side, help identify gaps, and really help the businesses grow and scale. The other thing about the central delivery process, I suppose, from all our perspectives, is what it allows us to do is really understand the business. So we're nearly sitting, partnering with clients, understanding their business in real time, rather than obviously delivering a back-end function like corporate income tax compliance 12 months after the year end. And by working with them in real time, being able to identify where they need to go and supporting them on the journey, I think is a key focus for what we're trying to do in this space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If we deliver, for example, global compliance services to our clients, be that direct or indirect, we're sitting on an enormous amount of tax data and information that talks about how a business actually is behaving from a tax perspective. And the insights that we can drive from that across all the different functions is really critical. And I think that's what our clients want as well. The idea of compliance being a retrospective exercise, like Claire said, that's really not what it's at anymore. It's more about driving the insights and value from that. Compliance isn't a cost if you're doing it right, because it actually is going to drive value for the business.
And then, Mark, talking maybe about the global approach to delivery and services, historically we would have seen tax incentives that are very much delivered at a local level. We've talked about Pillar 2 already on a number of occasions, and obviously Pillar 2 is having an impact on incentives and credits and where they're booked and how they're booked and what that means from a minimum tax perspective. How are you seeing your tax incentives team change and support clients from a global perspective?
Yeah, and it probably it builds nicely on what Emma's saying and your own discussion there around the centralised kind of global compliance side of things. It's kind of where we're moving to as well on the incentive side. So previously, organisations, groups would have been looking at each individual jurisdiction, what's the incentives benefit there, and what's that going to do to our tax position in that jurisdiction. Obviously under Pillar 2, that's all changed, and there's a number of jurisdictions now where effectively the value of that incentive will be either reduced or eradicated through Pillar 2 and top-up taxes that will be applied. So really now groups in combination with ourselves are needing to sit back and look at what are we doing globally, where are we going with our investment decisions, and how are incentives going to play into that. So it's a global picture now. It still comes back as well to where there's talent, where the other commercial factors that will come into play, track records in different jurisdictions. But I'm sitting in a lot of discussions now where I'd be sitting with a number of different jurisdictions, leads, looking at what the plan is for the group and really driving decisions from there.
And interestingly, there's probably a time where we has seen R&D as a differentiator. Obviously substance is now a huge thing from a tax perspective. Transfer pricing, obviously where functions are carried out and how profits are allocated are really important. But we've obviously seen the EU tax omnibus, the draft proposal, just issue a few weeks ago, and obviously R&D allowances nearly being a mandated requirement across the EU.
Yeah.
We found that interesting. Just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so look, there is an EU drive to increase investment in R&D, and if you look at some of the European grant funding, that's been proposed for the next 6 or 8 years, they're doubling what's been in place for the last 6 or 8 years. So as I say, there's that real drive and bringing in this harmonised approach on the capital allowances or the allowances for R&D expenditure on various tangible assets is really just another effort to try and drive that investment and I suppose reward companies that are undertaking those efforts within the European Union.
So just bringing this all together in summary, part of our key focus is really cutting through complexity. Tax is complex, tax is now increasingly global. So Claire, what are we seeing from a Grant Thornton perspective that we're really bringing to multinational global businesses and clients?
Yeah, so what we're seeing from clients is like the solutions that they need don't necessarily sit within one tax discipline. What we're seeing is the tax disciplines that they need answers are so interconnected that we need to bring them a multidisciplinary answer. So what we're doing is we're bringing people like the people around this table, Sasha, transfer pricing experts, indirect tax experts, international tax experts, incentive experts, to the client at the one time. We're having that one conversation with them. We're able to get the client to download the information to us at one session, so we're all hearing the one story, and that's across a cross-border piece and a global piece. So whatever countries the client is operating in, we're able to give them a multidisciplinary tax solution that covers all countries and all tax disciplines. You know, tax is not just compliance. Even the compliance is getting complex. So not alone when we take in transfer pricing, Pillar 2, C by C, all these additional complexities and the audit requirements that go along with those.
That's true.
You know, clients need answers. They need them real time, but they need them interconnected. They need an interconnected answer to be able to give them a better answer that's addressing their risk issues with all the different tax authorities, but also from an efficiency point of view. They don't need to have 6 conversations. They don't need to have 6 engagement letters. So that's what clients are really telling us is how we're differentiating in the market right now, that we're able to have those conversations.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the interconnectivity and the real-time delivery is really important because the pace of business is changing so quickly and we're seeing clients' businesses change so quickly that we have to be proactive in how we're delivering the solutions. And Emma, how does that feed into then the global delivery piece and how we're addressing that?
Yeah, it's the interconnected nature of that global delivery that I think is really critical. You know, you can't deliver a VAT answer in isolation. If a client is trying to look at e-invoicing mandates in Spain, they're trying to look at real-time reporting in Hungary and put all of that together, they really need a system and a process that delivers for that. So the way that we stand up our solution and the way that we deliver to our clients is about coming to them with that cohesive view. And not just on a local market perspective. You know, our business is an all-Ireland practice and we have UK and Irish expertise sitting here, but what we do and what we deliver to clients is about bringing in the local country experts as well. And for VAT, that's really important that we can bring together that network of experts and we can deliver that cross-jurisdictional advice.
So Mark, talking about cutting through complexity, incentives are a really complicated area when we look at the technology design tests, plus all the numbers that have to go behind it. How are we really supporting clients in relation to those claims and easing them through that process?
Yeah, so we've a really good global network here in terms of the incentives group. So I have regular communications meetings with our global team, and we transition that across to delivery to clients as well. So we'll have our global group sitting in with clients, be that might be the head of tax here in the US, wherever it might be, who has operations in a number of jurisdictions that they're looking after. So we have a single discussion with them, and from that we can go away and map out or model what the incentives look like across those various different jurisdictions.
Super, and that's obviously giving, you know, central insight to how that's delivered, obviously helping feed that in and helping pull the right information jurisdictionally, and obviously because a huge amount of that is interacting with their finance teams as well as their tax teams, which can be a challenge, plus their ops teams. And I suppose having a central mapping for that does really help us simplify that process.
Yeah, exactly, and not only that, we're also dealing with their engineering and science groups as well. So we have a significant number of dedicated science and engineering resources across the globe. So we can get in and have peer-to-peer discussions with their tax, finance, engineering, science, computer science groups. So again, that just helps in delivering that cohesive solution from the Grant Thornton perspective.
Yeah, right conversations at the right level, that's what it's all
exactly,
about.
Exactly.
And Paul, just from your perspective, kind of wrapping up from a transfer pricing perspective, global delivery, simplicity, can we say simplicity alongside transfer pricing?
You can't in relation to the actual challenges that we're trying to address, but I think in the case of Grant Thornton you can when it comes to how we engage with clients. So the advice we provide is a simplified version of the complex process it takes to get to that. Tax authorities have a real problem in getting to the bare bones of the facts. That is more complicated than you might think. The transfer pricing answer that comes off the back of that is probably a simple process, or certainly simpler than understanding the facts. Bringing that all together in a proper holistic advice, that's our expertise. We've been doing this for years. It's how we operate from a global standpoint, and bringing this together for clients in a neat, packaged, pragmatic advice, that's the piece that I think is the magic in delivering practical, pragmatic, commercial advice that it used to be a want, now I think it's a need for clients.
Multidisciplinary teams with deep technical expertise, cutting through the complexity to deliver simple, streamlined solutions for you and your global tax function. We'd be delighted for you to come and talk to any of the Grant Thornton experts sitting around the table.